What is a system? Conclusion. It's the last video in the series.
Yes.
What is physical?
What it is.
A system of interest is an entity within a universe.
The open system of interest interacts with external systems. Interactions occur across interfaces between the system of interest and external systems.
The system breaks down onto subsystems that, when combined, make up the whole system. Schematic diagrams help us keep track of systems and interfaces at each level.
System breakdown diagrams help us keep track of systems and interfaces between levels.
Schematic diagrams show the physical systems and subsystems and the interfaces that connect them. As they break down, the schematic diagram structure shows us what they look like at each level. So a person, a hammer, and a nail, what do they break down onto?
Hand, handle, head, and nail.
Those are both two different views of the same system at two different levels. A system breakdown diagram shows those connections between levels. So what does the hammer break down onto? The hammer consists of a handle, a head, and an interface between the handle and the head. The context contains a nail and a person. The person has a hand, and that's all we really cared about, so that's all that's in our model. There are interfaces at this level. There's the interface between the hammer and the nail, which becomes the interface between the hammer head and the nail. And there's the interface between the person and the nail, which becomes the interface between the person hand and the handle of the hammer. What is logical?
What it does.
A system of interest performs functions in the universe.
The open functions interact with functions of external systems.
Flows of energy, data, and materials take place across system interfaces.
Functions and flows break down into subsystem functions and flows. Function block diagrams help us keep track of functions and flows at each level. Functional decomposition diagrams help us keep track of functions and flows between levels.
The functions of a system are what it does. Functions take input, they perform some processing, and they produce output. They transform data, energy, and materials from input to output. Functions are usually named with a verb and then a noun. Function block diagrams can appear at different levels, and as the subsystems break down, the functions break down with those subsystems. Here are two function block diagrams at different levels. As the hammer breaks down onto handle and head, the insert nail breaks down onto amplify force, store kinetic energy. What does the remove nail break down onto?
Amplify force.
But we can see that more clearly in the functional decomposition diagram. On the functional decomposition diagram, we can see the insert nail breaks down onto amplify force and store kinetic energy, whereas remove nail breaks down onto two amplify force functions. The interfaces also break down. Here's a bonus round. Type. We haven't really discussed it in the series yet, but each flow between a function and another function conveys a type of energy, information, materials, or combination thereof. Types are often reused at multiple levels, but tend to decompose as flows are decomposed. Complex types warrant their own entity relationship diagram, such as a UML class diagram. Type is part of a three-pillar model for information transfer.
Who the information is addressed to. What is the intent of the transfer? How is the data encoded? REST calls these resource identifier method and media type.
This is a type decomposition, which is pretty simple in this particular example because we just have impulse and we have force. This brings us to the end of the What is a System series. In the next video series, we'll look at system lifecycle, the V life cycle for systems.
Hooray!